Say if you're watching this, you're probably feeling very overwhelmed with content creation for your business. Trust me, I get it. With new platforms popping up every day, platforms going away, a bunch of different experts telling you to be everywhere all at once and try this new hack to do this in the algorithm and like all these things, they're just so confusing. But here's the thing is that 2025 does not need to be another year of content chaos. So today I want to break down my exact formula and strategy for creating a content ecosystem for your business that's going to take you from invisible to irresistible in just 5 easy steps. I'm not going to give you any complicated frameworks, and I'm also not going to promise you that you're going to get 1,000,000 likes and make $100,000 in 1 week on Instagram. There's none of that fluff in here. I actually want to give you real and actionable strategies that you can implement starting today that actually work for your business. No matter if you are brand new on this content creation journey or you're ready to up-level your content strategy game, there's a little bit of something for everybody in this video. The first part of this process starts with something that I like to call picking your power platforms. And this is just essentially a fancy little term that I came up with to help you figure out where you want to show up online. And now, this doesn't mean you need to show up in every single social media channel, on every single marketing platform. But this formula is going to help you strategically figure out where you need to market your business online. You don't need to be everywhere to be effective, but you also don't want to put all your marketing eggs in one basket. And you've probably seen this before. There's a lot of experts out there that might tell you you need to be on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and YouTube and have an email list and do this and do that. Like, you need to be in all different places. And then on the other hand, there might be other experts telling you that you can make $1,000,000 in the next week by just posting on Instagram whenever you feel like it. And I am going to be the first one to tell you that neither of those are true for vast majority of business owners. Instead, we need to follow this 3-part formula that will help ensure that you're diversifying your marketing efforts without burning out and creating too much or not creating enough to attract ideal audience members. So what this looks like, I always guide my clients and my audience through the 3 different platforms that you should choose. So number 1 being a short form platform, number 2 being a long form platform, and then number 3, the one that nobody wants to hear, is that you do need to be doing email marketing. So for short form content, you have to think about these platforms as a quick hit for visibility. So you're going to think about your Instagrams, your even LinkedIn's, TikTok, something where you create that hard hitting content, but it is typically subject to some type of algorithm for distribution. This is the one that you're probably already comfortable with posting on, the one that you leaned on first. Most of the time it's an Instagram or a Facebook, especially as a small business owner. So just stick with one if you're just starting out. Maybe do 2 if you've been in the content creation game long enough. But you need to have at least one short form platform. Now, the one that might be a little bit newer to you is creating long form content. And the reason why I want to start creating long form content is because you get to dive deeper in certain topics, and it also builds your authority and trust with your audience. And the best part is you're not subject to an algorithm typically. Instead, you need to really optimize that piece of content for search. So when people go to look for something, your content is the one that pops up. So long form is going to look something like a podcast, YouTube, blogs. I would even argue that Pinterest kind of falls in this one because you can find pins years later. But you want that longevity, and this is setting yourself up for success years down the road. You might not get that instant gratification that you do with Instagram or TikTok, but again, we're making sure that your audience can find you for years to come. And this last one here, email marketing. This is the only audience that you actually own. With long form content and with short form content, those things, those channels can disappear, your audience can disappear, your accounts can get shut down. But the good thing about email marketing is when somebody subscribes to your newsletter, grabs your freebie, they have opted in to giving you their email address that you can now carry with you no matter what email provider you have, no matter how you want to approach email marketing. The only time that email disappears is if they unsubscribe. And the best thing about email marketing is it's a direct line of communication with your audience. Typically, your warmest leads, people have opted in and taken action, and they want to get to know more about you, about your business, about your services or products. And if I haven't convinced you already, vast majority of people check their inbox every single day. multiple times a day. Not everybody is scrolling through Instagram all the time. So that's kind of another reason I want to convince you to get started with your email list. This is probably going to be one of the most powerful platforms that you are on to market your small business. And now that you kind of know the formula and the approach for this, you might be thinking, okay, yeah, that's great, but which ones do I actually choose? And it simply boils down for each and every one of these. You have to figure out what you enjoy creating, what you're good at creating, and where your ideal audience shows up online. When you find the intersection of those two, that's where you learn the power platforms for your specific business. The second part of building your content ecosystem is going to be your content pillars. A kind of heavy hitting, a little bit crazy topic. Because there's a lot of confusion out there when it comes to content pillars. Sometimes you've heard them called content buckets, sometimes maybe content categories, but basically these are all the same thing. It's just a way to categorize the content that you intend to produce. A content pillar is just a key topic that you want to be known for as a small business owner as you create content and market your business. And one fun little exercise that I can run you through before we dive into how you're going to create these content pillars, I want you to think about it this way. If your ideal audience member were to type something into Google and your name was the first thing that popped up in Google, what is it that they typed in? Those are the things you want to be known for, and those can be the foundations of your content pillars. Before I take you into the next exercise, I do want to give you one big caveat. There are some marketers out there that will teach content pillars as being education, motivation, inspiration. And while if you're just getting started with content, I can see how that type of content pillar structure might work for you, but I want to advise you against it. Because things like inspiration, education, and motivation should be the end goal of your content, not a way to categorize your content. Because I want my end piece of content to motivate. I want my end piece of content to inspire. But that doesn't mean that that piece of content resonates with my audience, is a good use of my time, is it marketing my business? And I'll give you a prime example here. So I actually have 2 dogs named Jax, very long story. And I like to tie my dogs into my content. I like producing content pieces with my dogs in it. It's a part of my branding. Like, it's super, super fun and a part of who I am. Now, if I was following the structure of, like, oh, my content pillar is inspire. So today I want to tell an inspiring story about my dog and how they caught the ball at the park or something like that. Again, that's an inspirational piece of content, but what does it have to do with my business? Instead, let's look at my dogs through the lens of an actual content pillar, something like marketing strategy. I could talk about both my dogs, how they have the same name Jax, but they have completely different personalities. I would market to them differently. And I would start to infuse more of what makes sense for my business based on my content pillar versus just inspiring people with a cute photo of my dog. Now, the way that I approach content pillars, I like to give people just a number. Try and hit 5 different content pillars when it comes to your business. If you do less than that, sometimes it might be harder for you to find content within those content pillars. And if you do more than that, things can start to get very, very overwhelming. Now, with your content pillars, I want you to keep them as broad as possible. And you can pull your content pillars from these 5 different areas. You can pull your content pillars from your knowledge. What are all the different things that you know? You can pull content pillars from your experience. What are all those things that you did in the past to get you to where you are today? You can pull pillars from what your ideal audience needs. What is it that they need to hear in order to make a purchase with you, learn from you, get a freebie from you? What is it that they need to hear? You can pull some from your personal connections, meaning what makes you you? What makes you stand out from your competitors? What makes you unique in your space? And lastly, you can pull content pillars from your brand values. What's your mission? What's your vision? What is it that you care about the most as it pertains to your industry, your business, or your niche? Okay, so now that we know where we're going to post, we kind of have an idea of what we can post using content pillars. I want to talk to you about my favorite thing, content repurposing. And specifically, I want to talk to you about a really fun formula. And this is something that I use every single day, known as the 3 R's of repurposing. Content repurposing is also known as content recycling. And essentially what you're doing is you are expanding the life of a piece of content that you work so hard to create. And you could be potentially increasing the reach of that piece of content and the messaging behind it. So as you go to plan and create new content, you can look at past high-performing content, or content that needs to be redistributed again, you can tap into that arsenal of content that you already have to create pieces in the future. There are so many different benefits to content repurposing. It can help you save time. It can help you really meet people in the way that they like to consume content. It can reach new audiences. It can help you reinforce certain messages. And overall, it really just helps you as a small business owner create more content without burning out in the process. So the 3 R's of repurposing comes from a very, very popular content marketing theory, but I've kind of adjusted how you would approach them as a small business owner to make it just a whole lot easier, because the 3 R's concept when it comes to content marketing typically apply to much larger content marketing teams or corporate teams. Instead, I want to break it down to these 3 concepts that you can implement literally starting today. The first one being reposting, which essentially means you are posting the same piece of content over and over and over again. You can repost it on the same platform or you can repost it on a different platform. But essentially, you are taking that piece of content you have already created and reposting it again and again and again. This is by far the easiest way to approach these different concepts, and we can take it that step further by reusing our content, which essentially means you're taking that original piece of content, maybe making a few tweaks, maybe making a few edits to either, again, put it out on the same channel, on the same social media platform, or you might be tweaking it for a different platform. So this can look something like taking a top performing Instagram reel from last year and maybe tweaking the caption a little bit, but keeping the video the same. Or maybe it looks like taking that top performing Instagram carousel and you're like, I know this will perform really, really well over on LinkedIn. And instead of downloading your super fun graphic in Canva as a JPEG, you export it as a PDF and upload that to LinkedIn so you get that fun carousel effect and it fits the platform a little bit better. And this last one here is a bit more complex, takes a little bit more time and potentially money and outsourcing, but it's known as repurposing. And this is the foundation of my entire content creation strategy. And essentially you start with one larger piece of content and break it down into smaller pieces and figure out how to redistribute it, create new formats, and get as much as you can out of this one piece of content. So for me, this looks like taking YouTube videos, ripping the audio, and creating it as a podcast. So you might be watching this right now on YouTube, or you might be listening to it as a podcast. So that is how I stretch the life of a piece of content. I will also take this same exact recording and create short form videos, pulling clips right from that YouTube video. I'll take some of the things that I'm saying and put it out as copy for threads. Or I'll take the transcription from this entire video, this entire podcast episode, and write a blog. So if you want to learn more about the repurposing concepts, I actually created an entire video about it right here that you guys can dive even deeper into this. So now that we have gone through where you're going to show up, what content you're going to be creating, and how to get the most out of that content, now we really need to focus on creating a time-saving system so that you can produce all of this content as efficiently as possible. And the first part of this process is building out a content workflow. And it is not this big, huge, complicated thing. It is simply how you create a piece of content, taking it from idea all the way through posting it. Essentially, you just need to understand every single little step and task and potential team member that is involved in creating that piece of content. Your content workflow, especially if you're just starting out, might only be a few steps. Whereas like my content workflow, I have different team members involved and I have a lot of different steps and parts of my process that my content workflow, after doing content creation for the last 10 years, is actually quite complicated. And one quick exercise that you can do, no matter what piece of content you are producing, the next time you sit down to produce it, I want you to just get out a piece of paper or get out your notes app and write down every single little thing that you do. I want you to include the time it takes you to set up your equipment. Do you have to do hair and makeup? Are you washing your clothes to make sure you have multiple outfit changes? Are you more of a scripter, like you need to script out your TikTok videos? Or do you just need to set up the camera and have an idea and just start talking? List out every single little step so that when you go to build your content workflow, you know what needs to be done, who it needs to be done by. You can also start to see different holes in your content workflow. You're like, hey, I might need a copywriter to help me with caption writing, or maybe I need a VA to help me schedule my content, or maybe it can be as simple as I need a tool to help me do this a little bit faster. But if you want to learn a little bit more about building your content workflow, again, I have an entire YouTube video here, It is so in-depth and will help you craft the perfect content workflow that you know you can stick with. As you start to build this time-saving system, we have to take a look at your tech stack. And now, I don't want that term to intimidate you, but we need to understand all the different tools and software that you're using as you create a piece of content. The key thing here is to actually keep it as simple as possible. You don't need every fancy tool out there on the market to produce high-quality content. It's honestly more about finding the right tools that fit together seamlessly so that, again, you can create content as quickly and efficiently as possible so you can get back to running your business. I want you to think of your tech stack as a well-oiled machine, and all the components need to function together. Your planning tool needs to fit in seamlessly with the tool that you're using to actually create your content. And maybe you want that content creation tool to help you schedule that content or at least talk to the platform. For me, what this looks like is I am managing my entire content workflow, everything that I need inside of Notion. Then I'm using Canva to create some of the graphics and Descript to edit some of the videos. And then I'm using Metricool to schedule all of those videos. And these different platforms work together seamlessly. They fit in the way that I need them to. And it makes my content creation process so much smoother. But I don't need a tool for every single little step of the process. I really try and keep things as simple as possible when it comes to using software. Each of these tools needs to earn their place in your workflow, otherwise it's time to get rid of them. So now, the last thing you need to understand about creating a time-saving system is that the way to efficiently create content is through content batching. Now, before you run away or before you leave this video, I want to talk to the person that is creating content day to day, or maybe you have tried content batching and it hasn't worked, or maybe you haven't streamlined your content batching process just yet. Because truthfully, content batching is the way that you're able to show up consistently to market your business online. It helps you create that content without the daily stress, without the burnout, knowing that you have a game plan no matter what is going on in your life and in your business, that content will be created no matter what. And while my content batching process is a little bit crazy, I am a type A Virgo and I sit down and batch create all of my YouTube videos one time a month. My content batching process is a bit intense for most people. Now, what I want you to understand about content batching is you don't need to create all 30 Instagram reels you want for next month in a single day. No. Instead, what I want you to do and how I want you to approach content batching is simply start grouping like tasks together. And it doesn't all have to be done in one day, but we want to create an efficient system. So for you, maybe it looks like on Monday mornings, you're sitting down and getting all your video ideas for TikTok. You might be loosely scripting them, pulling trending audios. So you're in like that content ideation phase, maybe on Monday mornings. Then maybe on Tuesday, you sit down and you record those 5 TikTok videos that you need for next week. Maybe Tuesday night, when you're sitting on the couch, you can just quickly edit them on your phone. And Wednesday morning, you can write the captions, optimize them, do whatever else you need to do. But as you can see, we just grouped light tasks together to ensure that you have TikTok videos for the next week. This works for any platform, any channel, but essentially what you need to do is just start grouping those like tasks together, because once you're in ideation mode, it's so much easier to come up with more ideas. Once you're in writing mode, it's so much easier to just continue writing. And once you're in video content creation mode, your hair and makeup's done, the equipment's out, just record a bunch. That's actually what I'm doing today. You get to stay in the creative flow that is in line with that particular task in content creation. So you're creating not only better content, but you're creating it quicker and more efficiently and faster. And now you're able to get ahead of content creation, schedule that content out, so you aren't having to worry about it day in and day out, and it's causing you stress, or you're not posting at all. And the pressure of, oh, I don't know what I'm going to post today is off of you. So I've given you a lot of tangible, actionable components of creating a content ecosystem here. But now I want to talk about something a little bit fluffier, a little bit more woo-woo, a little bit more mindset-y, if you will. We need to start creating content that actually connects with our audience. And there's a few different things that go into this, and where I see a lot of business owners kind of trip up over creating content. And the first one being the professionalism trap. So maybe you come from more of a corporate background, or maybe you have a higher education degree in the area that you now have a business in. But we often think when we are business owners creating content online, we have to talk a certain way. We have to look a certain way. Everything that we do has to be super duper duper professional. And that's going to connect with absolutely Nobody. Oftentimes, you feel like you have to show up in this corporate like appearance, right? In a corporate like structure, and that you can't show off who you really are. And in fact, I want you to do the exact opposite. People buy from people. And a lot of the times we fall into this trap of trying to be like larger corporations. And that's just not who we are. That's not the brands that we are building. We are everyday people running a small business, and we need to market differently than the Coca-Colas of the world. So you have to combine your expertise, your experience, your knowledge with your personality, with your quirks, with who you are as a person. And that's what your audience wants to see. They want to see the intersection of your brain and who you are. And that is what experts mean when they talk about authenticity. And listen, I hate this buzzword as much as the next person, but this is what it truly means to show up authentically online is you are distinguishing yourself as the expert in whatever it is that you do as a small business owner, while also finding those connection points with your audience, because that's ultimately what's going to attract the right people to you. So I have 4 rules that I love to use and lean on when I feel like I'm not creating content authentically, or if I'm in a content rut, or these are just things that I always like to revisit. And my 4 rules are, number 1, creating content in the way that I speak. So when I sit down to write or I sit down to record a video, I do my best not to put on my corporate voice, or like I like to call it my customer service voice, where my voice goes up an octave for some weird reason. I try and talk to the camera like I'm talking to my best friend on FaceTime. Sometimes it doesn't always translate right, and I always just have to come back to this principle. I, in vast majority of my content, love to curse. The only reason why I don't do it here on YouTube is because I'm monetized. Sometimes you do have to abide by certain rules, but when I can, I really do show up in my content in the way that I would speak to somebody on a coaching call, to my best friend, to average everyday people. Number 2, I really think you need to lean into telling stories that are relevant to your audience. So now, as much as we want to show up and tell stories online, take it from me, in the lessons that I've not only learned, but what I've observed about this industry, is that you don't want to tell stories and use the internet as your personal diary. Sometimes certain things are better left unsaid, but you want to tell stories to your audience that connect with them. So for instance, last week I had to take my dog to the vet and it was like $1,000 and he wasn't feeling good and all these things. That's not necessarily a story that I need to put out online, but if I can find a connection point in maybe how that vet treated me, it was great customer service. I loved this touch point, this marketing, this blah, blah, blah. That's a story that would make sense. People don't really care that my dog wasn't feeling well. I might get some sympathy comments, this, that, the other, but instead, if I can tell that story in a way that will impact my audience and they can learn a valuable lesson from it, that's where the magic is. Now, don't take it too far like the LinkedIn bros do, because sometimes they'll go on there and be like, I just proposed to my girlfriend over the weekend. Here's 3 different marketing things that you can learn from it. Okay, doesn't have to be that crazy, but just learn to find stories that your audience is truly going to enjoy, that's going to impact them in a positive way, that they can inject themselves into that story, or they can have some point of value from it. So the 3rd rule is share the real stuff while also maintaining your boundaries. People want to connect with people. And listen, I am the kind of person, I am online every single day. I'm sharing a lot about myself, my life, but vast majority of things that go on in my personal life, you guys don't know about. And I like to keep it that way. But there are certain things that when certain things happen to me, or conversations that I have that I think are so valuable, and I think that they're conversations that are great to have online, I will share them. So for instance, a couple years back, I was going through a really rough time personally, had a bunch of things going on, and instead of just like boohooing on the internet because that wouldn't respect my boundaries, I didn't want to let that in. Instead, I shared a very real and raw moment that while I was going through hardship, I didn't plan for taxes properly. So I ended up owing a lot of money to the government a few years back, and come tax time, I was like, oh, crap, how am I going to pay for this? I shared that story online, and so many people responded to me in the comments, sent me DMs. They're like, these are the conversations we need to be having as business owners. Oh my God, I was in the same scenario in XYZ. And in those moments, it was a connection point with my audience. It brought value to them, still respected my boundaries of not sharing everything online. But again, that was a real and raw moment that I know my audience needed to hear and learn from me. And I was able to have very valuable conversations that also helped me in that really, really hard time. And the last one is ditch the rules that other people tell you, including me. So if you don't want to follow any of these rules, you can totally throw them out the window. These are things that have worked for me, my clients, and just what I've observed over the last 10 years of creating content. But just know you can throw those rules out the window. For me, I have talked to so many industry peers. There are so many people in my industry that are like, you could sell so much more if you did XYZ. And typically that XYZ is getting on Instagram stories every day. But I know that that doesn't work for me. I have never been able to be consistent with Instagram stories. It just doesn't work with my energy levels. I just can never seem to get on the bandwagon. And so I ditch that rule. I show up consistently in so many other places, and I'm like, I don't need Instagram stories. It's okay if I skip days or sometimes weeks and not post a single thing on my stories. So the big goal today is no more throwing content at the wall and hoping something sticks. I want you to take this 5-part framework and really start to develop your content ecosystem. No more burning yourself out trying to create content everywhere all the time, all at once, and no more posting and ghosting and leave your audience hanging for 6 months. So remember, the goal here is to create content that matters. Matters to you, matters to your audience, and matters for your business. So if you really like these 5 steps, and it brought you a bit of clarity, but you're like, I need a little bit more help, I need a little bit more guidance. This is the exact foundation of what I teach inside of my signature program called the Content System. We dive deep into each of these 5 different parts. This is my signature framework, and I give you a little bit of accountability and a little bit of hand-holding with the community aspect as well. So doors are going to be opening very, very soon. If you're interested, you can sign up at the link below. Other than that, I will see you guys next week.